Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome. We're absolutely delighted this evening to have with us one of the industry's influencers. This is Wol Kolade. I'm so excited that he's taken time out to have a chat. He's super busy. He's doing stuff not just in his own domain, but with government. He's doing work in the NHS. He's got his fingers on the pulse in a bunch of different ways. We'll get into all of that, but absolutely delighted. Wol works in the area of private equity, so we'll figure out what that is. But you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've been making these points, haven't we? Which is that you've got to do your 10,000 hours. You can't just wake up and be great at what you do. There's a huge amount of practice and prep and preparation, and it all amounts to these 10,000 hours that we talk about. And it kind of takes 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm trying to interview people, or I am interviewing people who have done their 10,000 hours. And we're asking ourselves what that looks like. We've also talked about understanding what makes the boat go faster. So for you, you've got exams coming up, or you've got really big decisions that you've got to make. Well, what makes the boat go faster for you? And if it doesn't make the boat go faster, do not do that thing. Be curious. We made the point that to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. Everything around the worm is horseradish. Well, you want to get out of your horseradish. You want to be curious. You want to ask yourself big questions about the world in which we are. Lift as you climb. So you're climbing the mountain and it's scary and it's dark and it's raining and it's cold and all those things. You got to lift as you climb. It's not all about you. It's not about you getting up the mountain. It's about you helping other people. You've got younger brothers and sisters. You've got people that you know making big life decisions. Help them up the mountain as well. Show them that there's a place for them. Do the right thing. Really important in our industry. If you're not used to doing the right thing, or if you don't get used to doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, you're going to come off the rails. This is super important in all industries. It's really important in this one. And know your values. Talked about knowing your personal values. What are they? I said mine are compassion, excellence, and respect. I don't always live up to them, but I try. And they're my guiding values and principles. If you ask me and you push me, those are kind of the three I'd say. What are yours? You need to know them. Well, let's get into this and let's talk about 10,000 hours of practice. Let's get into the conversation. And Wol, thanks so much for joining us. Absolutely brilliant that you're here. Thank you.
Good evening, David. Good to see you.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll get into your journey a bit, but just tell us a bit about your firm, Livingbridge. What do you do? And what's your life look like for you right now?
So life looks like, as I'm sure for everyone, that sort of frustrating Groundhog Day of being in the same environment, day in, day out, which is a challenge to keep motivated, a challenge to keep excited about what we're doing. The great privilege of being in a business like Livingbridge is we can get excited from the companies we've got in our portfolio. And so Livingbridge today has about 37, 38 portfolio companies. The reason I'm hesitating is we sold one just the other day we can't talk about. But if you combine the revenues of those companies, it's about £1.5 billion turnover, employing about 15,000 people. And we have the great privilege of managing something like £3.25 billion for a range of institutions from around the world, insurance companies, pension funds, like that. And then within Livingbridge itself, there's about 115 people working in my firm.
So how does private equity work? We hear these words, we hear about private equity, we hear about M&A, we hear about these different disciplines. Private equity, what is it at its heart? And just unpack it for us a little bit.
So, private equity is actually one of the oldest forms of investment. In fact, the public equity market is actually the new thing. Private equity is about acquiring a share of a business that's not on a quoted marketplace, and then through acting professionally and properly, building and creating value from that business and then selling it on to someone else later on. Which is why today we're involved in a lot of M&A, because we're buying companies, either they're quoted and we're taking them private, or from families where the owner doesn't want to pass it on to his children, or from corporates where the corporate has a division that it doesn't want to own anymore because it's changed its strategy and we acquire that. Or it's venture capital, which is a subset of private equity, where it's a new thing, usually technology or biotech, where we're investing to try and conquer the world, if I can put it like that.
And Wol, how did you get into this space? Is it something you always wanted to do when you were at school? Where you're like, I want to get into private equity. It's my thing.
Bizarre. I think my wife, when I first told her I wanted to do, and I met my wife at university, she just looked and said, well, why do you know anything about that? About everyone I talked to when I was that age, why do you know about this? And the answer is, I really don't know. I sort of put it down to sort of curiosity and a very, very low boredom threshold. And then being told in an economics class at my school, secondary school, about this company called the ICFC, which is the grandfather of private equity industries and private equity companies in the UK. And you know, investing in companies and growth and development and new things, I just thought that sounds amazing. And basically, it's all I wanted to do. The trick was how on earth to get into it, which was another story. But it always stayed with me, and I was very lucky to be able to get into doing it.
And if you had to look back over your career and just think about the skills that you've needed to kind of get to the top of your profession, what are they? If you had to just, you know, kind of put your finger on three or four, just things that when you look back, you say, you know what, I needed to be able to do that and do that really well.
So, I mean, private equity is a rather curious activity, if you think about it. You've got to have resilience and you've got to have curiosity. You've clearly got to be numerate and capable. You've also got to have good judgment as well. And that's just to do the work. That's to do the sort of factory work, if you like, the making. To actually run a private equity firm, you've got to think, I've got to be able to manage people like that. And it's a curious institution in the sense that my firm is stuffed full of very bright, very capable, very opinionated people who I don't tell what to do, I persuade to do things. Because I cannot be everywhere doing everything. And frankly, half the time, I don't know where they are. I hope they're doing the right thing. I hope they're doing the work. And I hope when they deal with people, they're representing our business in the way I want to represent it. And that's about, again, creating an environment for them to be the best they can be and to represent Livingbridge in the best way they can.
So it sounds a bit like the British Army, because the British Army, you know, there are these different ways that you can run an army where everything's decided by the general and, you know, the general tells you what to do and you don't do anything without the general say so. But then the way the British Army works is they train you to be able to make good decisions out in the field. So you're out in, you know, out wherever it is, and there's no one there to ask. So you kind of need to be able to make good decisions. Is that what you do with your people? I mean, do you have a training process where after 10 years at Livingbridge or 5 years or whatever the time is, you can kind of make your own decisions? What would Wol do? Is that
I really hope they will say, what would Wol do? It's an interesting, again, it's the curious nature of what we do is essentially I'm selling the most, one of the most simple and basic commodities, money. The money which I'm selling, it looks the same as your money, looks like the same as everyone else's money. There's nothing distinguishing about the money. So if that's the case, I'm trying to persuade someone to allow me to invest in what they've created. Other stuff's going on. The other stuff that's going on is I'm trying to explain to them why I'd be a good partner. So we're trying to build a relationship. And so I'm selling to them what's great about Livingbridge, the sort of experience we have, the fact that we've done it before, the fact that we've got a big team, you know, lots of money, all that sort of stuff. But here's the curious bit, because selling is easy and buying a company is extremely easy. Just pay the highest, you got it. I'm also assessing at the same time. I'm saying, is this person I'm selling to going to be a good custodian for the money I'm about to pass over? Because once I pass it over, it's gone till they decide to give it back to me. So you've got to be both sort of glass half full and glass half empty at the same time, which is really curious because most of us are actually one or the other. And you have to be able to flex between those two. And I like to say to my, especially new employees, as we have an induction process that's part of our training program. Look, when I was doing deals, I would sort of have, you know, yes, no, and the oscillations would ping about even to the day before I'm signing the legal document to do the deal. And the reason why that happens is because at the end of the day, I'm trying to buy a portfolio today based on information I'm gleaning today that I really want to earn in 5 years' time. So I'm making a bit of a bet, informed bets, educated bets based on experience. And so it's a very tricky role. And you find someone coming into it going, it's just about doing deals. Yeah, that's part of it. It's just about, you know, operational improvement, that sort of stuff. Well, if you can't buy a company, you've got nothing to work with. And then it's about sharing knowledge with your colleagues and ensuring that, you know, as you say, not so much what will Wol do, but what would Livingbridge do? How would we behave? Because if you're facing a tricky situation with the management team, and, you know, we sit on boards, so, you know, the Livingbridge representative, if we control a majority of the business, you know, our voice is heard a bit more, unlike the stock market where the shareholders are disparate and the board runs the company. Here, the shareholders present, but we delegate running the company to the management. And so when we speak, it's with a bit more authority and it carries more weight. I can't be everywhere. So I have to trust that individual understands what we'll be doing, how we interact with people, and what needs to happen. And sometimes that's hard conversations. It's, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be running this company anymore. And the first time I had to do that, I was 26. And this guy was 50. And
so how does that conversation go? I mean, you're sitting in front of someone who's running the company, and you basically got to tell them that
it's not the best conversation. I didn't sleep very well the night before. I'm on the board. They're making a complete hash of the business. We need to move on. A classic case of I wish I'd done it 3-6 months earlier, then the damage he caused wouldn't be so much. But you look the person in the eyes and you make the case, and it never goes well, really. And by that I mean, if they're silent and get up and shake your hand and leave, that doesn't preclude the explosion that comes later on. Or if they're ranting and going crazy in front of you, they may calm down straight away. But half of this will be just be clear about your facts, be respectful, and recognize, I'm a 26-year-old telling a 50-year-old got a career and built and run a bit. He doesn't deliberately go out to run it badly. It's just that he's not capable of running a business, given the circumstances he's changed, that's happened in that case. And it's painful. And that person's got to go back and tell his family that he no longer works there, and there's a value damage to his personal wealth that happens as well.
Yeah,
it's tough one.
Can completely see that. But let's just take a little sidetrack out into this part of the process of the thinking, which is around, or the conversation, which is around the fact that you are one of literally a handful of successful Black guys in financial services. I mean, it's just there's not many. Maybe just reflect a little bit on the landscape and how you see it. And of course, you're one of the co-founders of 10,000 Black Interns. And maybe perhaps just unpack for us why you got into this, why it's so important. Have you always thought this way? You've been in the industry now for like me, you've been here for many years. How has being Black in the industry kind of worked out for you? And maybe just shed some light on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep question, Dawood, as you know, because it's so complex. And it's if I go back to the beginning, I would say that private equity or financial services, I was one of the few Black people interested in going into it. When I was at university, there weren't many people thinking about corporate finance or banking that were Black. I joined Barclays Bank group as part of their sort of fast track management program. Of the 100 people, 102 people there were 2 Black people. And that was a really broad intake as far as they're concerned. And we just weren't applying to financial services. Now the question is, why is that? And the answer is, actually, it wasn't very welcoming. There was no role models to look at. There was no one to go, oh gosh, I'm going to be X, Y, and Z down the road. It didn't make any sense, if you like. So that's the first thing, is get over yourself. And I was just like, I'm interested in finance, I'm going to go to it. And the question is, how do you stay in it? Because what people have observed is that people get in, they get frustrated, they leave. And part of this, I was really very grateful to work with some really amazing people who mentored me and helped me think through how to make the right steps, to take the right steps. And that is about getting control of yourself. And part of that means that you recognize some of the issues you're going to encounter, and you have a decision to make. Am I going to put up with it in order to get what I want out of it? Or am I going to kick against that and end up, in a sense, damaging my ability to learn? And it goes back to sort of my father was a very man of great principle, but a very sort of gentle man, in the sense that he was at university in the 50s in the UK in Durham. And every time, look, the abuse I suffered in the 70s and 80s was nothing compared to what he suffered. And I always think about the grace with which he thinks this through. And in his mind, essentially, this isn't my problem, it's yours. Okay, that's the first thing. So I'm not going to internalize it. Second thing is actually shame on you and how you were brought up being so bad-mannered. I mean, how I really pity you. And and that's the mindset I went into financial services with, which is a very conservative, very cliquey environment.
Yeah.
And because they were getting nothing from me, they just sort of kind of moved on. And actually, you then and I was learning my craft and demonstrating that I was, as good and frankly better than most people around me. And eventually, the joy about financial services is a money game, right? And I didn't have to sort of. I made the conclusion. I came to the conclusion that if I have money or represent money, you may be someone who is prejudiced, but if I got this stamp on my forehead which says pound notes, how prejudiced are you really going to be if you need this stuff? And quite quickly, people get over themselves in terms of the customer thing. And internally, as I say, you just perform and do well.
And then on 10,000 Black Interns, that's something that caught your imagination. I mean, just tell us a bit about how you got into it and just maybe...
Yeah, so, I mean, this is a different issue now, because actually what I spoke about is the early part of my career. Thank you for bringing me up on that, David. The later part of my career is you start to get a bit fed up with the fact there's no one else that looks like you, and the people say you're one of the few Black people here, and you sort of go, well, why aren't we doing something about this? And last year we had this explosion of global interest in Black Lives Matter, which was the thing that precipitated this, but in injustice and prejudice. But the train already started with equality driven by gender, and so that train left, and actually questions started to be asked. And I think from that we're building the next phase, which is, well, if you're doing equality for gender, what about equality in general? And the Black Lives Matter thing, precipitated by the death of George Floyd, was a sad and tragic way for it to explode. And I was involved in three things which sort of came together at once, leading to me to write a sort of open letter, which I posted out on the web and on LinkedIn. And it was being involved with the NHS, where you got a disproportionate number of people from ethnic minorities dying. You got, I'm chairman of a major health foundation where the founders and the money initially came from slavery. And we have a couple of statues of the people out on our doorstep. And of course, private equity and financial services. And all those areas meant I really wanted to make a statement out of that. In talking to John Sorrell, one of our colleagues on this, and connecting the dots with you, it was a case of, well, the only way we're going to move this dial is to start, because you can't boil the ocean. We can't solve everything. But I'm going to borrow one of your phrases, Darwin, which is, there are kinks in the hosepipe we need to unkink. And there's a fundamental one at the very beginning, going back to my statement at the beginning. Not many people want to get involved in this. We need to make this accessible. And that's what 10,000 Black Interns, or 100 Black Interns, then 10,000 Black Interns is about. Making careers that people don't think fit just because they can't see role models, helping them to understand they do and they can. And for me, that's the power of the initial entry point, the internship. Because with that, as we normalize that, well, over time, and it does take time for the stuff, we'll get to the right place, which it isn't an issue anymore. I will not be one of the few successful Black men in financial services in the UK.
Yeah. And it is fascinating, isn't it, just to see how it has come to life. If you think that when the three or four of us started talking about this back in June last year, middle of June, to see the speed with which the entire industry has come together and joined hands, locked hands, and said, we all want to be a part of this. And now we've got more than 200 firms, more than 350 internships. And that's just for asset management. And then if you get bigger than that and you start looking across 23 sectors, we've got over 600 firms and 2,000 internships on offer. I mean, it's incredible. Huh? I mean, think about it.
And actually, again, I think we were pushing on an open door, to be honest, David. I think people were looking for something to happen. And what's interesting for me, actually, I was just reflecting on this. My first phone call to ask someone to take on a Black intern was to a woman. Very, very good friend of mine who runs a very big asset management firm. And in calling her, I knew that she got it. I didn't have to think about this. And that the way she would then use that to create the opening for us would be a big, very powerful. You've got a Black man and a very prominent woman asking you to do something.
Yeah.
And it really accelerated very quickly. Similarly, in some of the sectors we're talking about, again, I think of one, that we were scratching our heads and going, how many? Utilities. That call was to a woman who ran the one of the biggest utilities in the country, and she was, exemplary in her behavior and desire to get involved and to push her business to be at the forefront of this. So I think, we're helping each other to help ourselves and normalize this to an extent where we don't have to make I'm not saying it's going to go away because I don't think that's possible, but to make it less of an issue and to not have people feel they can't and move to, of course you should.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And my own story, which is that, interviewing at the bar and being told, sorry, we hired a black guy last year, we're not going to do it 2 years in a row. And we look back, you just shake your head and just say, how did that happen in 1987? But now even but the bar has now come to the table and has said, we want to be a part of this, which has been really gratifying to see. And and it's not just the bar, of course. It's law, it's accounting, it's executive search, it's PR, you name it. I mean, yeah, it's every sector. It's quite incredible to see. And I think there's one utility company that's actually offered 100 internships.
Well, that's the one I'm talking about. That's the firm. Yeah, it was astonishing.
Amazing. So we're talking about leaders stepping up and saying we want to get involved in this, and we want to lock hands and be a part of this. Let's just talk about great leadership, Wol. I mean, you've met and you meet a lot of leaders. Some are good, some not so much. But I mean, what does great leadership look? What are the hallmarks of leadership? And the people who are watching this, some of these guys are going to be leaders one day. What does that look like? What does great leadership look like?
I think there's some common themes within great leadership that are important. Most of them are sort of personal attributes as well as skills, but personal attributes, I think you have to have, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, a relatively low ego, because great leadership is about service. And my job as a leader is to create the environment for my people to do their best work and to bring their best selves to bear. Alongside that, you've got to have an ability to, a resilience actually, because leadership is lonely. At the end of the day, you end up being the one who makes the ultimate call. And it may not be a sort of overt situation, but other people will contribute, but people look to you. And again, setting direction and being comfortable doing that. Being a leader is, as I say, lonely, it's difficult. You've got to sort of put self to one side in the service of the greater good. And a key part of that is understanding that people want to be human beings. We don't like change. And generally speaking, if you're running a company, it's all about change. And you have to guide people, persuade them that change is good and the direction we're going to move in is good to have impact and effect. But you've also got to be quite robust and understand what environment is it you're trying to create, and be clear that the culture thing is both a great barrier and a great enabler to your success. And if you don't pay attention to that, and in this day and age where we're talking about most companies being service-based companies, people, you've got to be on with the people thing. And that doesn't mean, you're a great communicator, you're a great, orator, or you're a great, it's just being able to listen and then react and be authentic in your listening and reaction. So nothing undermines great leadership than if inauthenticity, as in, I believe greatly in diversity. No one's hired who's diverse. Or I don't think people should behave like this. They do, and you do nothing about it. That undermines it straight away. Integrity, straightforwardness. But I would say the biggest thing for me is understand leadership about service and serving the people who you're going to lead.
Yeah, I love that. I love that point, because I guess as this group of people are about to embark on who knows, careers in financial services, if all goes according to plan, but they'll, somewhere they're going to end up doing good things. This idea of service is huge, right? Because it's a fantastic mindset to go in with, which is not just about me. It's the point I was making earlier about lifting as you climb. But alongside service is also this idea of the people who are successful, I think, are people who are authentic. There's something about authenticity.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that you look for?
Yeah, and again, look, I mean, there are different levels of leadership, and my own belief is that and it's rather sort of, trite, I guess, but everyone can be a leader, right? You don't have to be at the very top to lead. And you can lead situationally, you can lead, in temporary situations and that move on. And actually you can build your leadership capabilities as you move forward.
Can I just jump in? That's interesting. Do you think everyone can be a leader? Because there'll be people watching this who say, "Oh no, not me. You don't understand. I'm shy. Just even talking in public is a nightmare. How can I possibly be a leader?"
Everyone can be a leader. I firmly believe that. I think leadership can be taught. How good a leader you are is a mixture of how you respond to the teaching and some of your own attributes for the situation you're in. But everyone can be a leader. And again, I think that the important thing is to recognize that the situation is really important. And we found, if you look at some of these storied leaders, you look at the past, they were good leaders for that situation. As the situation changed, they shouldn't have been leading anymore. So I think the other part of leadership is recognizing when to stop leading, when you need to hand on and move forward. And again, that's part of one's authenticity. If I've been leading a business with that service mindset in service dynamic in mind, then I need to understand part of that is understanding when I reach my limitation. I'm as you know, a film fan, and there's a Clint Eastwood quote which says that a good man knows his limitations, right? I know what I know and can do well, and I know when to ask for help, even as a leader. I know when to step back and other people take charge. It's a really multifaceted thing. I would put aside the sort of, rather sort of caricature views of what leadership is, which is macho, front-facing. You can lead from behind, right? As well.
Yeah,
it's a multifaceted thing.
And I mean, we talk a lot about mentorship and about role models. Was there anyone who had outsized influence on you and who helped you as maybe you were that 26-year-old who was just starting out? But is there anyone, tell us a little bit about anyone who's influenced you over
Actually, I would say there are three people. So first, when I was at Barclays, I was very fortunate, because I actually turned the job down to work as his personal assistant. I was going, I'm no one's personal assistant, and he's one of the directors, and he called me up and said, "What's wrong with being my personal assistant?" And I was so shocked to get him on the phone that I ended up accepting the job, and it turned out one of the best things I ever did. And I learned from Tony about just doing the right thing, even if it cost you personally. He was a man of extraordinary principle that meant in a vast, really complex political environment like Barclays, it's easy to not to do the right thing. But he made a point and was known for doing the right thing. And it was interesting to watch. And he didn't get as high in the business as he should have got to, mostly because he didn't play the politics that people did. It was good to watch that. The second person was my first boss in private equity, where, he was such a rigorous thinker that he was able to help me understand the difference between what the process tells you and what exercising judgment's about. Because a lot of people think if I just, investigate harder, look at the financials harder, get the commercial stuff done well, the answer's there. And of course, the answer isn't there. You need to exercise judgment based on a complex set of things, experience, knowledge, on what you're being told by the process. And the final person, there was a woman who I probably has had the most impact on me. I've known her for 20 years. And she's quite a leading light in terms of, the gender equality agenda. One of the first few FTSE 100 chairwomen or chairpersons or chairs. Chairs, isn't it? Chairs. And what Alison does so well is she helped imbue me with a sense of there is no limit to what we can do. And she was very good at just, you say you thought that through and it's all done. Are you sure about that? As well as just being a fantastic individual and a great friend. So I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, well, these things are all important. And we talk to people and say, look, find a mentor, because it's the difference between figuring it out yourself and just having.
Can I just jump in there? There's a really important thing you just said: find a mentor. Find a mentor doesn't mean that everyone you approach is going to be your mentor. That's not how it works, right? It's actually you recognize when someone is mentoring you, right? So if I didn't sit there and go, Tony be my mentor, he was my boss.
Yeah.
But actually we worked out a relationship where he thought it was worth investing in me is knowledge and wisdom. And that's the same for Graham and also for Alison. You know, they thought there was something there where, you know, we had a work relationship because she's the chairman of our business, but actually outside of that, you know, her networks, her knowledge, her views, she imparted freely, but she didn't have to. There was no, I want you to be a mentor thing. And that's the thing I think people need to understand. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone you go, you're going to be a mentor and we're going to have a formal relationship. You can build it over time with people who are currently around you.
But have a spirit of learning and of growth. No, absolutely. And I mean, look, you've been almost 3 decades, maybe, you know, thereabouts in financial services. It cannot all have been plain sailing. There must have been lows as well as the highs. I mean, talk a little bit about the business of failure or just, you know, hitting a roadblock and having to pick yourself up. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I have been, it's 31 years in financial services, 28 in private equity, which is interesting. The problem is, I mean, I never lent a bean as a banker. It's great to anybody. But investing in private equity, if you don't have failure and you can't live with it, then you shouldn't be in it. Oh God, there's so many stories. But the one that sticks in mind is one of my first deals where I'd invested in a company, and I must have been 28, 29, and I think it was my first failure. But it was how it came about because I'd done this deal. It was a very hard fought auction. We did it. I went on holiday, and I got a call on a Monday morning from one of my colleagues saying, the CEO of that business you just invested in is desperately trying to get hold of you. Sorry to interrupt your holiday. And it was a time when, you know, going back a few years, I didn't have a mobile phone. I had to find the phone of the villa I was staying in. And I picked the phone up to him and he said, we don't know where the cash is, Wol. Going, we bought the business. It was supposed to have this much cash in it to payroll and to working capital. It's gone. I then put the phone down and went, oh my God, I've literally invested in a company. On day one, it's gone bust.
Oh no.
It took a bit longer.
Oh no.
But basically, it had gone. And there was a mixture of really poor due diligence, tiny bit of fraud, but not easy to prove, and a CEO who was coming in and didn't know enough about the business to spot all the clues. Because when you look back, you go, oh yeah, that. Of course. So that was an interesting low. But a different low, the same, but not quite as bad. It actually turned out a successful deal, and it had no right to be a successful deal. Was when I invested in this company because we used to share deals. So another private equity firm couldn't quite do it all back in the day, and they phoned us up and said, you know, would we get involved? And actually, it's all my colleagues who then subsequently left, and I took over the file from him and so started looking at it. And anyway, I'm sort of sitting there thinking, well, okay, I'm just getting this deal done. Anyway, I did it, and we all did it. And at the completion meeting or dinner, I said to the guy who led the deal, the other private equity firm, I don't know how to tell you this, but I never actually went to the company. You know, I hope you don't mind. And he looked at me and went, I didn't either. I went, what? He said, no, I took the file from someone else at my company, and I assumed they went, but I never went myself. So the banker was standing there, and he looked at both of us and went, oh, crap. I assumed you two went, so I didn't go.
Are you serious?
The sweat that was pouring down my face, but I'm thinking, does this company exist?
No one went to the company.
You didn't see it? You didn't see it? What have we done? It shouldn't have turned out all right, but it did.
It did turn out all right. Oh man. But yeah, look, I mean, what about, for example, when you meet with surprises that you're not expecting? How do you deal? What's your framework for dealing with bad news? So you wake up in the morning, it's all going according to plan. You walk in the office and suddenly you get that call, which is there's no cash, or we never, whatever's happened has happened. Something bad has happened, and it just happens. It's part of life.
Yeah.
A few times a year, you get that call. What's your framework for just? You got to stay calm. What do you do in that situation?
So this goes back to leadership actually, and being the CEO, my job is to be the repository of bad news. And it used to be on Friday afternoon, and for many years I've worked from home on Friday, partly to just get out of the office environment and just have the thinking time. And every Friday, my colleagues would inevitably call me up, or I'd get a call from one of them, and they'd say, "Well, I'm just going to tell you, this has happened. It's really bad. The deal didn't happen. We didn't get the deal. We got the deal, but it's fallen over." I'd go, "Yeah, thank you very much. That's great." And then they would feel better, and I'd have the weekend to stew. And literally, it was handing over the parcel, breathing a sigh of relief, and then me having to hold it and worry about it through to Monday. And it used to stress me out for a while. And I suddenly thought, what am I getting stressed about? Okay, to your point, the way to get over this is to look over the edge and get comfortable. It's bad. What does that mean? Well, I look over the edge and it's bad. Can I live with that? If the answer is yes, then move on and just forget about the stress and just focus on doing what you need to do, rather than spinning around in a circle, getting stressed about it.
And I guess that comes with practice, right? Because the first time you get bad news, you think your world's ended and you think it's all over and you're going to get fired. And then eventually you realize that pretty much most things, I guess all the cash not being there isn't.
The point about that, David, is that, look, we have a portfolio of 20 companies, right, in that fund. And actually, this one was a poor judgment. But actually, another deal I did that year made 5 times the money, more than paid for that. Now, it looks bad. I felt bad. People start to question your judgment of the process. You question yourself. But actually, the next thing I look at, guess what? I am razor sharp about the issues that came the other one.
Yeah.
And as long as you learn from the mistakes you make, then you should feel okay with the stress.
Yeah, completely. Let's very quickly talk about the business of networking and social capital, because in our industry, this stuff is invaluable. The ability to pick up the phone. I mean, when John Sorrell picked up the phone to you and said, "What about this?" and then picked up the phone to me and said, "What do you think?" and then there was just this sort of phone calls going, and then suddenly we're able to pick up the phone to people who run trillions, candidly, of dollars and just say, "Would you like to be involved?" That doesn't just happen, right? You don't just wake up with social capital. As our viewers are trying to build their own networks, what's your advice? How do you go about that? And you're in your early 20s, you want to build it. Is it all about LinkedIn? Is it about lunch? How do you do that?
Well, I think there's an importance, I believe, in the sort of contacting the real. It is very helpful, having met people in reality, to be able to converse over this. But it's not so easy if we're just doing it like this or on LinkedIn. And you've got to be interested and want to do it. And I think that a lot of people struggle with the situation where they're in a big room and there's lots of people talking and they must all know each other and it's all, how do I break in? Da, da, da. And the advice I give people is, look, networking is about taking responsibility for 2 things. One, how you enter a conversation, which is closed to you, and how you leave it. Okay? So if I'm going to break into a conversation with a group of people talking about, I must be bringing something to that conversation. And by the way, that's not rocket science. I'm not sitting there waiting to listen. Otherwise, why am I there? And actually, within you've got lots of stuff you can give. If it's not working, you have to take responsibility to leave the conversation and find something else. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. No one looks and goes, "What an idiot." Because everyone in that place is in the same boat. If you can get comfortable doing that, then meeting people and wanting to take the conversation to another level, which is, let's have another conversation, let's meet. It's not about having a deeper, meaningful conversation there and then. It's about exchanging ideas and conversations to see what could happen from that. And I think being curious as well. I mean, I have got involved with all the things I've got involved with just through literally conversations, You meet one person, you talk to someone who remembers you, who then puts you together with someone else. And I would say most of the things I have got outside Livingbridge have come from the edges of my network. Yeah. People I don't know that well, who just go, "You ought to talk to Wol because of that." Yeah. And then that's how it's built up.
Yeah. Do you know, I was having a conversation with someone this afternoon someone in government actually, and they were singing your praises and sort of making the point they were saying something about you and about how you'd influenced some particular situation. And it's right, isn't it? It's that you end up being influential in ways that you probably would never have, if someone had said to you, do you think you'd have been influenced in that situation? You'd have said, maybe, but it's not obvious. But it's that curiosity also allied with boldness and a sense of can do, right? And being a sort of that, I am going to get involved in that rather than saying no, saying yes rather than no.
Okay, so we have to give everyone the real secret of when you get older and wiser. So for me, I'm very clear. The older I get, the less I know for certain. And you got to just think about it for a minute. Because when I'm young, I know lots of things for certain.
Yeah.
But the older I get, I'm absolutely sure I know less things for certain. And that's the mindset I bring into conversations, which is I'm going to learn something out of this, right? And here's my view. I don't hold it so closely, but I offer it. And if you then find you can interact with people at that level, it becomes less threatening. The number of people I know have seen who basically, bang the table, force their view on people, it becomes boring and no one wants to listen to it. And meetings like that, I've seen where you ended up having the meeting and then, afterwards people call you up and go, you made a small point. Can we just expand on that? This guy was talking crap and dominated this meeting, not interested in what he's got to say or she's got to say. So there's many different ways of dealing with this.
Yeah, totally. And look, we've got to wrap because our time's gone. But if you were just going to give, a top tip to this audience, just your learnings distilled over the last, 31 years, and you were just to say, you know what, if you're going to take one thing into your career and into your life, into your workplace, an attitude, a mantra, a value, something that's really served you, what would that be?
And that's a lot to do in one sentence. And I'd focus on career thing rather than it's the way to live your career. And I would say it is be careful how you treat people on the way up because you never know you're going to be on the way down. And actually that you take a mindset, which is I'm going to, as I rise, as I improve, as I get better, as I develop my career, I'm pulling people with me. I'm being a reasonable individual. I'm being someone that people trust, want to work with, not an arse. Because, the number of times I've seen people who've been just dreadful to me, absolutely appalling, who I've seen on the way down. And I'm sitting there going, half you don't even recognize you met me before. I know, which is remarkable, but they don't. And then you sort of sit there and you go, even then I'm gracious. And I think acting with grace is the thing I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much, Wol. You've been absolutely brilliant.
That pleasure.
I know you're doing deals. I know you're mixing it up. I know you're working in government. You're in the NHS. You've got your finger in all manner of pies. So it means a lot that you take the time out. And you're probably going to get some LinkedIn requests from the crew and the crowd out there. But look, thanks so much. And we'll see you. We'll see you again soon. Many thanks, Wol. Thanks everybody. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you on the next occasion when again we will be running from 5 o'clock to 5:45. Please be there. By the way, please send your phone numbers in. The reason we want those is we're going to probably set up a WhatsApp group and let's try and get some community going. Send those into Stu and or Esther. Promise we'll look after them. All GDPR compliant. That whole piece. But we just want to be able to put people into a group and be able to just commune and break bread and share links with you and tell you what's happening. Email's just a little bit kind of last decade. So anyway, well done, everybody. Stay safe, stay well. See you soon. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.